In our hyper-connected age, where digital platforms amplify every thought and social media celebrates constant visibility, we have been conditioned to believe that power comes from being seen. The modern mythology preaches that success requires announcement, that strength demands display, and that influence grows through exposure. We share our victories before they solidify, broadcast our strategies before implementation, and mistake transparency for authenticity. But what if this entire framework represents a fundamental misunderstanding of how true power operates? The Renaissance political theorist Niccolò Machiavelli understood something that our contemporary culture has forgotten. Genuine strength reveals itself through restraint, not exhibition. In the brutal political landscape of 15th century Italy, survival depended not on who could shout the loudest about their capabilities, but on who could move with precision while others stumbled in their eagerness to be noticed. Machiavelli observed rulers who fell because they could not resist demonstrating their power publicly, creating vulnerabilities that their enemies exploited with devastating efficiency. During this tumultuous period, Florence became a laboratory for political survival, where the stakes of miscalculation meant exile, imprisonment, or death. The city-states of Italy engaged in constant warfare, diplomatic maneuvering, and economic competition that required leaders to think several moves ahead while revealing nothing of their intentions. Those who succeeded understood that every public declaration created constraints on future action, while every boast provided enemies with intelligence about capabilities and limitations. Machiavelli witnessed firsthand how the most effective rulers operated not through grand proclamations, but through careful observation, patient planning, and decisive action when the moment demanded it. They maintained networks of information while revealing little about their own positions. They cultivated reputations for unpredictability that kept rivals off balance. Most importantly, they understood that perception often mattered more than reality, and that controlling perception required controlling information. Consider Cesare Borgia, whom Machiavelli studied extensively. Borgia rarely announced his military campaigns in advance, preferring to strike when enemies least expected it. He maintained multiple diplomatic channels while committing to none publicly, keeping adversaries uncertain about his true alliances. When he did speak publicly, his words were carefully crafted to serve specific strategic purposes rather than satisfy personal ego or social expectations. This principle extends far beyond political maneuvering into every aspect of human interaction where influence matters. The businessman who announces his expansion plans before securing funding finds competitors blocking his moves. The negotiator who reveals his bottom line early loses leverage before discussions begin. The leader who explains every decision erodes the authority that silence would have preserved. Each revelation becomes a weapon in the hands of those who choose to remain hidden. Consider the psychology behind this phenomenon. When we display our intentions, abilities, or achievements, we invite evaluation and comparison. Others begin measuring us against their own standards, looking for weaknesses in our approach, questioning our methods, and preparing countermeasures to our strategies. The moment we become fully visible, we transform from mysterious forces to manageable quantities. People fear what they cannot predict, but they attempt to control what they can understand completely. This psychological dynamic operates at both conscious and unconscious levels. When someone reveals detailed information about their plans, goals, or methods, listeners automatically begin processing this information through their own mental frameworks. They compare the revealed strategy to their own approaches, identify potential flaws or improvements, and often begin formulating ways to compete with or undermine the disclosed approach. This happens even when the listener has no immediate intention to compete, simply because human minds naturally analyze and categorize information for future reference. The phenomenon extends into evolutionary psychology. Humans develop sophisticated pattern recognition abilities to survive in complex social environments. When someone consistently shares information, Others unconsciously map their behavioral patterns, emotional triggers, and decision-making processes. This mapping creates predictability that reduces the sharer as tactical options, while increasing others' ability to influence or manipulate them. Modern culture has inverted this wisdom, encouraging us to document every aspect of our journey toward success. We photograph our workouts, live stream our thoughts, and create detailed narratives about our progress. This constant documentation serves several psychological needs: validation, connection, and the illusion of accountability. However, it also broadcasts our current limitations, reveals our tactical approaches, and provides competitors with intelligence they never requested but gladly receive. The social media ecosystem has created unprecedented pressure for constant sharing and self-revelation. Platform algorithms reward frequent posting and high engagement, creating economic and social incentives for oversharing. Users compete for attention through increasingly personal revelations, believing that authenticity requires complete transparency. This environment has normalized behaviors that previous generations would have considered strategically dangerous. The attention economy functions by extracting and monetizing personal information, creating business models that profit from our willingness to share intimate details about our lives, thoughts, and plans. These platforms disguise intelligence gathering as social connection, encouraging users to provide detailed behavioral data that companies then use for targeted advertising and psychological manipulation. The more we share, the more valuable we become as products to be sold to advertisers and data brokers. The strategic disadvantage of overexposure compounds over time. Each piece of information shared becomes part of a larger pattern that others can analyze and exploit. The entrepreneur who regularly posts about his struggles with cash flow inadvertently signals financial vulnerability to potential partners and competitors. The executive who shares detailed updates about corporate restructuring provides competitors with insights into internal weaknesses and strategic priorities. These individual data points may seem harmless in isolation, but they accumulate to create detailed profiles that others can use for competitive advantage. The fitness enthusiast who documents every workout reveals training schedules that competitors can use to plan superior preparation. The investor who shares market analysis provides free intelligence to others while receiving nothing comparable in return. The professional who discusses workplace challenges gives competitors insight into internal company dynamics. Advanced data analytics can identify patterns across seemingly unrelated posts to construct comprehensive profiles of individual behavior, preferences, and vulnerabilities. Machine learning algorithms excel at finding connections that humans might miss, creating detailed psychological profiles from scattered social media activity. These profiles become tools for targeted influence campaigns, competitive intelligence, and strategic manipulation. Silence, by contrast, creates space for others to project their own fears and assumptions onto your actions. When people cannot determine your exact capabilities or intentions, they tend to overestimate both. This phenomenon occurs because uncertainty triggers caution, and caution breeds respect. The unknown quantity in any room commands more attention than the person whose every thought has been cataloged through social media posts. The power of strategic ambiguity extends beyond individual interactions to shape entire competitive landscapes. Companies that maintain secrecy around their research and development efforts force competitors to make strategic decisions with incomplete information. This uncertainty often leads rivals to overestimate the threat and respond with excessive resources, or underestimate and respond inadequately. Either response creates advantages for the silent party. Apple exemplifies this approach by maintaining extreme secrecy around product development. Their silence forces competitors to guess about upcoming releases, often leading to misdirected research and development efforts. When Apple finally reveals new products, competitors frequently discover they have been preparing for the wrong challenges. wasting resources on irrelevant features, while Apple captured market advantages through superior strategic positioning. The principle applies equally to personal relationships and professional environments. The individual who speaks constantly in meetings may believe they are demonstrating expertise, but they often achieve the opposite effect. Their colleagues begin to tune out their contributions because predictability reduces perceived value. Meanwhile, the person who chooses moments to speak carefully finds that others listen more intently when they break their silence. This dynamic reflects fundamental principles of human attention and cognitive processing. When someone speaks frequently, their words become background noise that others filter out automatically. The brain adapts to constant stimulation by reducing sensitivity, similar to how we stop noticing familiar sounds or smells. However, when someone who typically remains quiet chooses to speak, this breaks the established pattern and commands immediate attention. Professional hierarchies often reflect this principle naturally. Senior executives typically speak less in meetings than junior employees, not because they have less to contribute, but because they understand the strategic value of selective communication. Their silence creates space for subordinates to reveal their thinking, provides time to process information before committing to positions, and ensures that their eventual contributions carry maximum weight. Warren Buffett demonstrates this principle through his communication strategy. Despite being one of the world's most successful investors, he speaks publicly only a few times per year through carefully orchestrated events. This scarcity makes his words carry enormous weight in financial markets, often moving stock prices and influencing investment strategies globally. His silence between communications creates anticipation that amplifies the impact of his eventual statements. This dynamic reflects a deeper truth about human attention and respect. Scarcity increases value across all contexts, including communication and self-revelation. The rare metal commands higher prices than the abundant one. The exclusive invitation carries more weight than the open call. Similarly, the person who rations their self-disclosure maintains higher perceived worth than someone who shares indiscriminately. The scarcity principle operates because humans are evolutionarily programmed to value resources that are difficult to obtain. This programming extends to information and attention as readily as to physical resources. When someone makes their thoughts, opinions, and personal information freely available, these become abundant resources with correspondingly low perceived value. Conversely, when someone carefully controls access to their inner world, this information becomes scarce and therefore valuable. Economic theory supports this principle through supply and demand dynamics. When information is abundant, its marginal value approaches zero. When information is scarce, its value increases exponentially. The same economic forces that govern commodity markets apply to personal information and communication. Those who understand this principle can deliberately create scarcity around their thoughts and insights, increasing their perceived value and influence. The challenge lies in distinguishing between productive communication and unnecessary revelation. Not all sharing represents strategic weakness, but much of what passes for authenticity in contemporary culture serves no purpose beyond satisfying our need for validation. The key question becomes, does this revelation serve my objectives, or does it merely serve my ego? Effective communication requires clear objectives and strategic thinking about what information advances those goals. Sometimes transparency serves important purposes, such as building trust, demonstrating competence, or creating accountability. However, many communications occur simply because we feel compelled to fill silence, prove our worth, or satisfy social expectations rather than because they serve strategic purposes. Professional environments reward those who understand this distinction. The successful consultant maintains an air of expertise by sharing insights selectively rather than demonstrating every aspect of their knowledge in initial meetings. This approach creates perceived value through scarcity while maintaining mystery about additional capabilities. Clients value what they receive more highly because they sense that more valuable information remains available if needed. The effective leader provides direction without explaining every element of their reasoning, allowing subordinates to respect the decision while maintaining the mystique that supports authority. This approach prevents subordinates from second-guessing decisions based on incomplete understanding of the factors involved, while also preserving the leader's flexibility to adjust approaches as circumstances change. Steve Jobs mastered this leadership approach by providing clear direction while rarely explaining his complete reasoning. His presentations revealed finished products without showing the messy development process, maintaining an aura of visionary capability that inspired both employees and customers. This selective revelation created a mythology around his decision-making abilities that enhanced his influence far beyond what complete transparency could have achieved. This approach requires significant psychological maturity because it demands that we find internal sources of validation rather than external confirmation. The person who needs constant feedback about their worth, intelligence, or capabilities will inevitably reveal more than strategic wisdom recommends. They will explain themselves when silence would serve better, justify decisions that require no justification, and seek approval in situations where respect would prove more valuable. Developing internal validation requires understanding that our worth does not depend on others' recognition or understanding. This represents a fundamental shift from external validation systems that most people rely on throughout their lives. Educational systems, social relationships, and professional environments typically provide feedback that becomes the basis for self-worth. Breaking free from this dependency allows for strategic communication that serves objectives rather than emotional needs. The digital age has made this challenge more complex by creating platforms that reward sharing and punish privacy. Social media algorithms favor frequent posting, detailed updates, and emotional transparency. These systems profit from our willingness to provide personal data and attention, creating economic incentives for behavior that may not serve our strategic interests. These platforms have fundamentally altered social communication patterns by creating artificial urgency around sharing and responding. The constant stream of updates creates pressure to contribute regularly or risk being forgotten. Notification systems interrupt natural reflection periods, encouraging immediate responses rather than thoughtful consideration. The gamification of social interaction through likes, shares, and comments creates addiction-like behavioral patterns that prioritize platform engagement over strategic communication. However, those who resist these incentives gain significant advantages. While others exhaust themselves creating content and managing their online personas, the strategically silent individual focuses energy on results rather than documentation. While competitors reveal their methods and limitations through constant sharing, the reserved operator studies these revelations and adjusts accordingly. The competitive advantage of strategic silence becomes most apparent in professional contexts where others are sharing freely. While colleagues broadcast their struggles, successes, and strategic thinking through various channels, the silent observer gathers intelligence without reciprocating. This information asymmetry creates opportunities for superior decision-making and strategic positioning. Intelligence agencies understand this principle intuitively, gathering information while revealing nothing about their capabilities or intentions. This approach allows them to operate effectively while maintaining tactical advantages over opponents who reveal too much through public communications. The same principles apply in business, politics, and personal relationships, where information asymmetry creates power imbalances. The practice of strategic silence extends beyond simply avoiding oversharing to actively cultivating mystery and maintaining unpredictability. This involves controlling not just what information you release, but when and how you release it. Timing becomes crucial because the same information shared at different moments can produce dramatically different effects. Information timing affects recipient psychology in profound ways. Early revelation allows others time to prepare responses, develop countermeasures, or simply lose interest before the information becomes actionable. Late revelation can appear reactive or defensive. However, perfectly timed information release can create maximum impact while minimizing opportunity for interference. Furthermore, strategic silence requires developing comfort with being misunderstood or underestimated. Many people cannot tolerate others having incomplete or inaccurate information about them, leading to compulsive explanation and correction. The strategically minded individual recognizes that being underestimated often provides tactical advantages, allowing them to exceed expectations and maintain the element of surprise. This principle manifests differently across various contexts, but maintains consistent underlying logic. In negotiations, the party willing to sit with uncomfortable silence often extracts better terms because others feel compelled to fill the void with concessions. In leadership situations, the executive who withholds judgment until gathering complete information makes better decisions than those who announce positions prematurely. Negotiation psychology demonstrates how silence creates pressure that others rush to relieve through concessions or revelations. Most people find extended silence uncomfortable and will speak to break the tension, often revealing information or making offers they had not intended to share. The negotiator who can tolerate this discomfort gains significant advantage by allowing others to fill the silence with valuable information. Master negotiators use silence as a tool to extract information and concessions. They ask questions and then remain quiet, forcing the other party to elaborate and often reveal more than they intended. This technique works because humans have a psychological need to fill conversational voids, often sharing information that weakens their negotiating position. The challenge lies in implementation because our social conditioning works against strategic silence. We have been trained to view communication as inherently positive, to equate sharing with caring, and to interpret reserve as potential hostility or disengagement. Overcoming these assumptions requires conscious effort and consistent practice. Cultural conditioning around communication varies significantly, but most modern societies emphasize openness and sharing as positive values. This conditioning begins early through educational systems that reward participation and punish silence, continues through social relationships that equate sharing with intimacy, and extends into professional environments that often mistake visibility for competence. Beginning this transition involves audit of current communication patterns and identification of areas where less revelation might produce better outcomes. This could mean posting less frequently on social media, sharing fewer details about ongoing projects, or simply pausing before responding to questions that might be better addressed with deflection or delayed answers. The audit process requires honest assessment of motivations behind current communication patterns. Many communications occur from habit rather than strategic intention. Others serve emotional needs for validation or connection rather than advancing specific objectives. Identifying these patterns allows for more intentional choices about when and what to share. Practical implementation might involve establishing personal rules about information sharing. Some successful individuals maintain strict policies about never discussing ongoing negotiations, future plans, or internal company matters in casual conversations. Others create deliberate delays between having thoughts and sharing them publicly, allowing time for strategic consideration of whether revelation serves their objectives. The goal is not to become secretive or antisocial, but to become more intentional about what information serves your objectives and what merely satisfies social expectations or personal insecurities. Strategic silence represents a form of discipline that pays dividends through increased influence, enhanced mystique, and greater tactical flexibility. Implementation requires developing new habits around information sharing and communication timing. This might involve creating deliberate delays between having thoughts and sharing them, establishing criteria for what information deserves sharing, and practicing comfort with incomplete explanations or unanswered questions from others. The transformation process also involves retraining our relationship with validation and approval. Instead of seeking external confirmation of worth through sharing and explanation, we must develop internal sources of confidence and self-assessment. This psychological shift enables strategic communication by removing the emotional compulsion to share for validation purposes. Ultimately, the choice between visibility and strategic concealment reflects deeper questions about what constitutes genuine strength and how power operates in complex social systems. Those who understand these dynamics position themselves to succeed in environments where others struggle, not because they possess superior capabilities, but because they deploy their capabilities more thoughtfully. The path forward requires courage to be misunderstood, discipline to resist validation-seeking behaviors, and wisdom to recognize when silence serves better than speech. Those who master these skills discover that true influence grows not from what others know about you, but from what they respect about what remains unknown. This transformation from performer to strategist, from broadcaster to observer, from explicable to executor, represents one of the most powerful shifts available to anyone seeking lasting influence in an increasingly noisy world.